welcome to Learning with Lulu. In this video we are going to do a quick chapter summary of chapter 33 in Jane Eyre. So in this chapter, that little scrap of paper that St. John took in at the end of chapter 32, that's where it comes into play. So while Jane is sitting reading a book of poetry that St. John gave to her, he actually gave it to her in the previous chapter, I don't think I mentioned it there. Anyway, she's reading this book of poetry and he shows up and he essentially is like, I have this kind of fascinating, troubling story for you. He proceeds to tell Jane her own story about an orphan girl who became a governess for a Mr. Rochester and almost married this Mr. Rochester. She's disappeared and her name was Jane Eyre. As we know, Jane gave her friends a false name. She said she was Jane Elliot. And even now, she doesn't jump and just say like, oh, you figured me out, I'm Jane Eyre. She kind of is just quiet and continues to kind of see why St. John is talking about this. And she knows that, she suspects that he knows. Or I guess she suspects that he suspects that she is Jane Eyre. But she doesn't immediately just go like, oh yeah, like that's me, you know my story, what of it? And St. John continues to say that this Mr. Briggs sent him a letter asking if he knew anything of the whereabouts of this Jane Eyre. And he says that it's very important that she be found. And Jane, hearing that there's someone that's had correspondence with someone who's potentially connected with Mr. Rochester, all she's interested in knowing is if there's any word on him. She's not exactly kind of thinking about what this person's interest in her may be. And St. John kind of points this out to her and he says that, you know, Mr. Rochester's like, he's not the point of this story. The point of this story is Jane Eyre's uncle, John Eyre, has died and left his entire inheritance of, I want to say it's £20,000 to Jane. And so at this point, Jane, she's not even super jumping at the fact that she's essentially an heiress now. She is still just kind of sorting out why St. John knows this, how he figured out who she was, and he shows her the scrap of paper that he took, and it's her signature, Jane Eyre. And then Jane asks him, she's like, well, why would they ask you of all people? And it's then revealed that St. John, he is her cousin, which means Diana and Mary are her cousins. His full name is John Eyre Rivers. And yeah, his same Uncle John is Jane's Uncle John, John Eyre. And it's this uncle who has left her everything. And so Mr. Briggs had been contacting St. John because they were family and maybe they knew. And it's this bizarre, serendipitous circumstance that the people who took in Jane when she was in her most desperate need and then turned out to be really wonderful friends aren't only dear friends, they actually have turned out to be her family. And Jane then kind of starts not actually jumping up and down, but nowadays we would say she was jumping up and down at this news. The fact that she has family is of way more worth to Jane than the fact that she's inherited £20,000. And in fact, Jane she doesn't even want all 20,000 pounds to herself. She wants to split it up between herself and these 3 cousins of hers, so that they each get 5,000 pounds. And again, it's just the wealth, the abundance that Jane has just received in loving family connections matters way more to her than the abundance of a fiscal or financial nature. And that really shouldn't come as any surprise. You know, Jane, she was raised in a wealthy household by a family who were very unkind. And from that experience, we know that she had to have learned it doesn't matter how comfortable your material surroundings may be, if you don't have strong, loving family connections, then you know that wealth can't bring you joy. You know, you've got to have that social connection there. So that's chapter 33. Jane inherits a bunch of money. She also learns that she's got this really wonderful family in, I'd say, mainly Diana and Mary, but also in St. John. You know, he's helped her out a lot. And so she's very excited about that and wants to split her new inheritance evenly among all 4 of them. So that's chapter 33. I hope this video finds you well and that you find it useful. And please make sure to subscribe to the channel, like, share, all of those good things. Please come back for more content, and hope to see you around.